Annalie, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to this.
Me too.
Tell me, who is Annalie Howling?
Ooh, today I would say to you, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. I get to appear on amazing things like this with wonderful people like you, having deep, honest, authentic conversations. And I suppose I also would have to qualify myself as a kind of content creator and influencer as well. But my day job really is the performance coaching and trauma therapy, which lies underneath all of it.
Yes, which of course comes from a lot of lived experience. So if we go back to a young Annalie, talk to me about that sort of initial journey of who and what influenced you career-wise and sort of life decisions.
That's an interesting question, actually. I don't know how many influences I had that kind of married up with who I felt I was inside. I think one of the beautiful things about social media, although it can be overwhelming, is you can find the niche of the thing that sings to your soul. Honestly, when I was little, I thought I was Matilda. I had such mean parents. Genuinely, my father was very violent and my mother colluded, which meant that I had no safe person in my home. And I would read Roald Dahl's work and the escapism and the fantasy, but genuinely, Matilda, I'd sit there waiting for my Miss Honey, just wishing
You
that someone
identified with her.
so deeply. And, there is a happy ending in that story in that she gets away from her parents, which never felt like her parents, which is exactly how I felt, and then was given this kind of happier life with someone that recognized her for who she was. And I think that was kind of that was one of the stories that really spoke to me at that time.
Yeah. And during those times where you were, it's tragic to hear that, isn't it? Where that's your family unit, if you like. That's where you should feel safe, but actually you couldn't wait to escape.
Mm.
What kept you going through that time? Because I imagine very early on your resilience was being built and your desire for hope, if you like.
Mm. I think the things that kept me going were probably thinking, well, even with your childhood brain, how am I going to get out of this? And it has to be building sort of security for myself. So being good at school would have been how it started, doing well in studies and exams. Also, that would tend to mean you probably weren't as likely to get physically punished. So trying to do that. And then I actually really remember that when I was about 15 or 16, maybe Sex and the City came out on TV. And I was like, that's it. That's it. I don't even really know what this is, but I'm going to do marketing. That's it. This is the answer. I'm going to drink cosmopolitans, have lovely friends, get into a city, be away from these people, my parents. And that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a career woman. So I think actually, in a way, as much as we could laugh about it or as an entertainment program, it did offer me a sense of no, you can have girlfriends, you can take over a city and you can be a successful woman independently. So I remember you asking me that question. That was something that resonated as well.
What resonates with me is role models, Matilda, and then Sex and the City. And
Yeah.
again, I'm smiling, but actually, it just shows you how important they are. Shows you how important the right messages at the right time are for you. I want to just flip forward almost to now, as you say, author, performance coach, and helping so many people. How important are role models, and do you see yourself as one?
Oh, I would love. I believe I am. Yes, and I can say that without arrogance, uh, because of I think how I live my life so openly now. I mean, from writing my book and sharing my story so openly, and I had like not a ding dong with the publishers, but they wanted me to write like a 10 steps book, like do these 10 steps and you'll be healed, and click your fingers and I don't know, do 3 breaths and it's all cured. And I refused, and I said
Fair
no,
play to you.
absolutely refused. I said I'm not doing it because that's not true. And if I sell that book and peddle it, it might help a bit, but it's a band-aid. So for me, I really wanted to, and because of finding solace in pages and recognizing myself when I couldn't recognize myself in the world around me, I have my client stories in there, as you know, I have my own stories in there, and I have experts in there to help people who don't feel like they belong, or it's about shame, or that the shame has told them that they're broken or something isn't right. And I want them to read these pages, and as they turn it, that lifts out of their system. And it might not be your story, but we're little bits of each other's, and it gives you hope. You mentioned that. So that's the sort of the role model piece, or the hope, because I've been in a place a number of times in my life when I did feel broken and I did feel isolated and I felt very alone and ashamed. And what you need in that moment is hope. So that's why I created what I created.
That
And
leads you to writing the book as well, because
absolutely.
authenticity is what I feel coming off you, and even just challenging the publishers. Other people could have been just so pleased to be writing a book and want it to be successful, which actually can influence for the wrong ways so many things. Right, you stayed authentic to yourself, and that lived experience that you bring to it is underpinned of that.
Mm.
Have you had almost like an outpouring, which could also be kind of empowering for you in some ways, from people that have read the book, identified with it, and then seen you as someone that can help them? Have you had that, where people
Yeah.
come into you saying, you're the first person to have explained that, and I've been able to talk properly and so on? Have you had that?
The reviews on Amazon are insane. Though there's all 5-star reviews.
Makes it all worthwhile then,
It's
right?
unbelievable. The reviews, I mean, I read one earlier on the train traveling up here that was, "I didn't know how to put this into words. I thought there was something wrong with me. I feel relief from reading this," because what I didn't want to do either was be prescriptive as to what you had to do. This is why I wouldn't do a 10 steps thing. Take this thing or do that thing and you'll be cured, because we're all individuals as well. But I wanted people, like I say, to sort of feel that relief and that release and just know that they have hope. And from there, with autonomy, choose the things that are going to help you and what you need to do. But yeah, the messages, the voice messages I've had, the one lady wrote to me, said she was reading it in Marbella, and she said, "I physically collapsed on the floor." And she said, "I was crying because something came up and came out that I've been probably trying to ignore." And it was, she said, and that sounds terrible, but actually it was an incredible experience. It was such a big release,
Liberating,
literally liberating from
which actually
something.
makes you that role model. Without, you probably were too humble
It,
to say, but I think
yeah.
people are looking for someone potentially to articulate and explain something that they won't release, they won't let out.
I think perhaps the role modeling, that because it's still quite recent, I think I'm catching up and processing myself on sort of what's happening, and I'm still in the throes of having just published a book and getting it out there and doing what I call frog kissing to like get it over the line. But I think, and also I wrote it a couple of years ago now, and it's been through the editing process. But that book is so honest. I mean, there's so much of my
Raw.
story in there. There's my divorce in there. There's all about reclaiming my sexuality. There's stories of theme pain. There's so many friendship breaks up, betrayal. There's so many things in there that are so deeply honest. But I think because I've written it, had an editor go all over it with me, written it again, I've almost not numbed out to it, but kind of got a bit more used to it. And I've spoken about it now a lot, doing these awesome things. So I'm really relieved that people are having those experiences, because that's why I had the ding dong with the publishers, to make it so unbelievably visceral. I wrote in the introduction, this was a difficult book to write, and it's a difficult book to read. And I'm not allowed to say a certain word, but difficult gets done. So yeah, that's what I wanted to happen here. And I think it has.
Unapologetically. Yeah, and
Unapologetic.
I love that. And I think there's a humbleness about you, but also a confidence. Without any arrogance, you're very fully present,
Mm.
facing forwards. But I want to take you back to, you mentioned some of the things that are in the book that you describe clearly as raw. Those lived experiences at the time clearly were not enjoyable at all. I want to know, back to almost the same kind of question of the Matilda years to then those adult years, what got you through some really, really tough times?
I would say, in all honesty, probably like adrenaline and other poor coping habits until about 29, when I had a huge burnout. And I write about that as well. What I now know in hindsight is that because of the childhood trauma, because of feeling unsafe, because of not having a safe place or family unit to return to, no matter what happened to me, that's how I felt. I was running, and I was trying to out sprint my own trauma or my own history. What I was doing, quite sensibly, was trying to build financial security as quickly as possible, because that meant if anything happened to me, I'd be safe. I'd have my home, I'd have my life. I never needed to go back to a place that caused me pain. So that's what I did. Like, I got an MBA without an undergraduate degree, because I couldn't waste the time going to university, because that would have meant I may have come away with debt, and I would have had to spend more time in that
It's
environment.
really smart. That's a young age to process that,
It
work
was
it out.
it was probably pure, like, I need to just keep going. Thankfully, I had a job and a lovely boss who we've reconnected from the book. So it was a wonderful mentor to me years ago, who read an article about me in the Telegraph, so we reconnected the other day, which was gorgeous. He kind of saw something. I asked, "I wanna do this MBA." I did it whilst I was working full time, and I kept on, then it's like, "Well, I want to move on to this job, I want to move on to this job." And I did it all fantastically until, as I say, my body went, "Nah, no, 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 no," and got served my back on a plate, basically, which, if anyone's had a burnout, is you can keep going and thinking, "I've got this," and then your body in some way will pull you back down to the ground and say no. And that's what happened to me. And from there, I started to do what I now know is, we could call it my healing journey, but really, probably there was enough distance between me and that to start unpicking who I actually was, to even meet the person I actually was rather than who I should be, or performing roles, or, masking or being perfect, or we'll call it what we will, just to try and get me far away from what was the danger, and really try and understand and integrate all that I'd done, and then move into roles and opportunities that are much more aligned with my soul, which is being, I would say, of service to others.
I can see that. Where does forgiveness fit into this? So that sort of almost contentment I can feel off you now.
Mm.
At times you've been treated like no human being should be treated. And yet I feel like there's no, and everything I've read and seen that you put out, and a force for good, I must say, on social media, what you put out on socials is, I try not to do this, but I put something out and then I see some of you and I'm completely going through all your stuff. Have you reached a point where some of these people, even back to your parents, have you forgiven them?
Yes, but you don't forget, is what I would say. And since becoming a mother myself, that was a huge part of this for me. When my daughter arrived, you have daughters, there's this sense within me that was instant, that was, I'm here to protect this beautiful girl. And any threat that I see around her is not something that I want, and it's my job to stand in the way of that. So I had less understanding for what they did, I think, when I became a mother myself, particularly my own mother's actions, and literally standing by and watching, and then telling me it was my fault. That to me was kind of a whole new level of twisted. But I don't have their experiences. They're not part of mine and my daughter's life. I'm sure that must be quite hard. But yeah, I don't feel any animosity. I'm very happy in my life. And I say this, I'm not grateful. I actually write about this in the book. I'm not grateful for the harm that has been caused to me at the hands of others that I'd never deserved, but it's definitely made me better at my job.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, and actually that, it's that whole, that what doesn't break you kind of makes you, and I think there's lots of things there that you wish you'd never had to go through, but
Mm.
I think that's also where, can't even relate it to that, but things that didn't go right for me in business meant I pivoted, that I wouldn't be talking to you now, enjoying this conversation. So it's that whole understanding that difficult in the moment. But what advice would you give to someone that is watching or listening to you now, thinking, "I can't forgive and I won't, and I can't release it," because that's not just
Yeah.
about the person not forgiving. This goes back to the whole, like, how we think in our brains and the voices in our head. It's actually limiting what they might be capable of.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sort of give some bandwidth to that, because there's nuance to everything. I mean, I have some clients, I'm just gonna sort of trigger warning this. I have a lot of clients in for sexual assault. A lot of the times that's at the hands of family members, sometimes even their parents. Do I think they need to forgive them? No. But do I think that if we carry anger and poison and shame within ourselves, it costs us? Yes. So I think there's a path for all of us. I was asked in an interview recently, do you think everyone's meant to heal? And it was such an amazing question. I thought, actually, I think we're given opportunities that present to us often, and it's whether you choose them or not. You talked about a career pivot, which then leads you to opening up and maybe having to be vulnerable and humble, and being humbled to kind of have to pivot and learn things and do different stuff. So I think if you're open to the things that are being presented to you, you will be given these opportunities that can support your path. But I think, I found my way. I don't like to dictate to others. I have heard some of the wickedest things that were beyond my comprehension that could happen to from human to human. So I'm also going to hold space for people that may be finding themselves there. But I would say to anyone, if something is costing you your peace, we do have to find a way to at least put some of that down. And quite often in my world, with trauma and deep harm that's been done, the thing that's costing us is the shame that we carry. So I do a lot of work with people that have been betrayed in business, in romance, in other areas. And although the act has been done to you at the hands of another, they still hold shame. How could I have been so stupid? Why was I so weak? Why didn't I know better? Why didn't I see that coming? And so that's actually the kind of insidious, shameful messaging that your imposter's got all over it as well, that's in their ear the whole time, driving them. You could be out of a job, or something's changed, or a business hasn't worked out, and you could be so riddled with the shame of that, become quite bitter, quite defensive, untrusting. And it may have been no decision that you made or anything like that, but it's the shame that's the thing that kind of corrodes your soul and your sense of self from the inside.
You articulate that so well. The word, you said it. I was actually almost, if you're going to draw to a close and hadn't said the word bitter, I've in business relatively recently, I festered on something that I felt bitter about, and it totally took my eye off the ball. of all the positives and all the facing forwards things that I could and should be. And I had to have a proper shake. And I'm 47. I should know better. I have my own lived experience, but I really needed to shake on that. So I think that's invaluable advice. When someone is engaging with you as a client, how important do you think that the differences between having the lived experience and being professionally qualified to give advice? And the reason why I ask that is I wondered if it's changed over the years, where someone that might have had the lived experience would keep that back, because I'm not going to let you into my bit. I'm here professionally. We're having a conversation, and I'm helping you with my. But I feel like your strength is not just the professional advice, but actually you have that empathy, and you can say, everyone's different, but I have been through this. I can, and people respect that, and that authenticity, I think, is now what we're craving more.
Yeah, I mean, the connection piece, I love that question as well, because I do think that me being able to be with people's pain, I've definitely said in the therapy room now, because people feel ashamed to tell me the feelings that they're having or things they've been through. And sometimes I'll say, look, this might be helpful, but this has happened to me. And, and that could be seen as, if you went down to a certain book of the way we were all trained back in the day, and, maybe that isn't the way that everyone does it. But for me and clients coming to me and the clients that find me,
That's a strength for you.
and they've seen it on socials as well. So, I mean, it'd be a bit weird if I was kind of then suddenly not saying anything. I always say to my clients, you can tell anyone you want anything you want. You're the client, you're fully empowered. That does not go for me in this session. That's the trust piece. So if I'm in session with someone, whatever they say to me, that stays with me. Whatever I share, that they can take that forward and use that as advice themselves or someone else that they love. And I think we do need to sort of mention ChatGPT and that kind of technology now, because there is a pro version that is a therapist. Esther Perel has been training Hinge on prompts that I've been approached 55 times from various startups that, can I please be the voice and train their AI bot in therapy? And I'm definitely not against it, because actually, if it's a cost effective way of, and it is, let's be honest, the machine learning is moving on and on and on to give you a level of comfort or peace in a moment, and you're maybe learning something about yourself by way of a mirror. I'm not anti it, but I really feel so strongly, like we do a lot of trauma retreats in person. I feel more than ever we need opportunities to disconnect from kind of the insanity around us. And I include in that sort of AI and being over reliant on things, and have real opportunities to be with people, to witness you, to put the device away and to really connect. When I do the retreats, the first thing we do is we tell stories of shame, but I make you work in a partner. So you'd have to tell someone the thing that you've been holding on to, and they read it out. And it's the most exceptional, powerful, unbelievable exercise. And you have your story retold. You're witnessed by someone who's desperate to get it right for you. They're listening to you like you'll never listen to. Did I get that right? Is that what happened? And then you see everyone else in the room and their reaction to something that we tend to minimize. And you're like, oh, maybe that was actually a bit worse than I thought it was. I've been saying was fine for 40 years. And actually, you're looking at everyone in the room going, and this outpouring of empathy and connection. And I feel that the future we're moving towards is having even more of those opportunities, however we can, to really be with people and share ourselves fully.
Well, we're social. Humans have always been social, and we've got this pandemic of loneliness that comes from life being made easy. We can order a pizza while we sit here now, and you can have a car waiting for you outside, and book your holiday to and people are isolating more and more, whether they are choosing to or not. And it's interesting you bring up AI, because I like what you're saying there, actually, because what I think could be interesting is that a lot of people that are hiding their emotions, that are not being them true selves, they actually could potentially find some of those answers out along that AI route, that would then draw them to then want and need the human connection that they should have had, which should potentially bring the. Do you agree with that? Do you know what I mean? So
I
like,
think it can
it might be that they're not brave enough to have a conversation, but they'll do it with
totally.
AI. It reignites the whole principle. I should be doing this, and now I'm actually now going to reach out to Annalie.
Yeah, I was chatting to a friend of mine's son, and he mentioned that his dad had started, who was ex-military, very kind of closed off. He just hadn't ever really discussed anything. And he had started, because same thing, had started sort of to use the AI model, and then was signposted towards, actually think you might have some PTSD. So obviously I'm not saying it's prescriptive, I'm not saying everyone should, but I think we also need to be real that people are going to use it. It pops up and says things. And I think, like socials, where you can find a really niche group that share the same interests as me, or you could find my page where I'm talking about trauma and it could really help you. And we've got a really lovely community where people help each other in the comments. Okay, you get the occasional idiot, but very rare. Most people are really supportive. And did a post on narcissism, and this guy, God love him, did a massive comment. That was me. I did that. I've lived with regret every day of my life. Don't think for a second my life's moved on. Everything I'm saying is true in this video. And this is incredibly brave and generous of you to share the journey you've had to be on, and you recognize the harm you caused others. And that was such a helpful thing in the community. So I feel like AI as well, we need to, with all the things, be, to your point, if we're helping it to keep us in connection in some ways and not kind of using it because it is all too easy to, if we're in a Waymo in Austin, it's all too easy to never interact with any one human. And we used to have some good chats in the back of a car with the driver. So yeah, I think we need to try and keep those pockets of connection where they're of value, but absolutely lean in and leverage the technology that's
I love
here.
that. That's powerful. And I think that's the message I was trying to actually probably maybe she again just said brilliantly is AI in this same conversation and social media get a really bad rep. People are afraid of AI. People are finding the sort of misuse, if you like, of social media and how the wrong role models are rising to the top and so on. But actually, it's how we choose to use it. Flipping it back to you, your social media is a force for good. If you're actually engaging with what you put out there, it's educational, it's inspirational. It might be talking about tough and hard things. And actually, I want to open up that narcissistic side. It's powerful what you said about him flipping that back.
Very.
But that it seems to be popping up more and more and more. And it feels like what I thought might have been sort of isolated behavior, and there are narcissistic behavior going on in isolated pockets, if you like. It seems that that's a lot more prevalent, and you would be someone to really kind of open that up and tell me more about that.
So again, like with all things in the healing world, there's a bit of a paradox. I think the term is being overused, and so
The true sense, yeah.
the danger of that is that people that are genuine victims, it's become a bit blasé. So people that are truly, absolutely victims of narcissism, which is very serious and can be unbelievably awful for someone's entire life. I think because it's like, oh, they're a narcissist, you're a narcissist. I think that's almost like devalued that term for some people. So I just want to put that in. But there are so many different types of narcissism. So I think we often think of the malignant narcissist. We could paint a picture of, I'm not doing this politically, but we could say, oh, Donald Trump's a narcissist, doesn't care. He's out there being brash and doing what he likes and telling lies and being mad and gaslighting people. And we could be like, typical. But there's a martyr narcissist type who would be more of a, could be sort of a cult leader, like a fake guru, should we say, in my space? Someone that's, if it wasn't for me, if I wasn't the person, create like fighting for this cause, then nothing would get done. And we think charity boss, let's just say, something like that. And you could go, wow, this is such an amazing cause. I'm completely going to fall in with this, but that can also be serving their gains. The one that's the kind of hardest to navigate is one that's called a covert or a victim narcissist. So this is someone, and I can tell you the way you can tell with all of these, there's like an underlying link I can tell in every single one. It's always so hard for me. You got that, John. I wish I had that. Why can't I have more of this? Trying my best. I never get lucky. This is wrong with me. I can't because of
Victim
that.
mindset.
Complete victim mindset, but with a great big spoonful of entitlement following it up, because they want everything that you have, but they're not prepared to do a thing for it. So they're watching you the whole time with this entitlement and expectation that they should have everything you have without being prepared to put the work in. And then when faced with any kind of, not even conflict, but confrontation about it, or you could do this, just, oh, I can't, it's too hard for me. I've got all these issues, mental, physical, other things. And they play on that and they perpetuate it because actually they get a lot of attention. So with each of these narcissist types, the underlying, if you like, it's not again a catch-all, but if people are interested, it's entitlement. Look at all of these people, and if they have an overriding sense of entitlement, regardless of what they're saying, there is a high propensity for narcissism.
That's fascinating. Where does ego come into this as well? So, and I'm going to relate this to kind of almost a lot of what you would interact with clients over, where there's someone that's very controlling and very quickly, whether it's a conversation you have with a client or a relationship that you are observing, and you realize that that person is controlling, and ultimately the other person in the relationship could be being dominated or be under some kind of spell, like a cult snare. How does that person remove themselves? What red flags and warnings can you pick up and go, I need to start building steps out of this?
If you become isolated from people. So quite often someone that's trying to be very controlling will tell you negative things about friends and family members. Oh, they haven't got your back. Oh, did you notice that so and so gave you a dirty look at dinner? Making things up, and they didn't get you a very nice card. Or we spent £40 on their present and they didn't get you anything. So they start kind of feeding in. You start questioning your, people that have always been around you. You start therefore arguments happen around seeing them. It's just easier not to do it. You end up kind of placating and keeping the peace. I mean, this is linked to trauma as well because there's the 5 trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze. We all know about flop, pass out on the spot. Last one is fawn, and fawning happens when you're in a situation with often a very domineering person or personality because you're placating, and fawn happens in sexual assault, but fawn also happens with narcissists. If I've got a narcissistic boss, which I did have, but I need to like get my mortgage paid and look after my kid, I know the things that they're doing are inappropriate. I worked in construction before Me Too. I was like a corporate courtesan. The amount of times I was touched, told to stay out late, comments made about me, my body, everything, all the time. I had an MBA in economics, and it was like the comments that were made about me. This FTSE 250 business as well, in the city. It's a big company, and it was ridiculous. But I knew all this stuff was wrong and I didn't like it, and I didn't want to be out late drinking, but I wasn't allowed to go home until the last client had gone home, and you'll be back in at 8 in the morning and all of these things, and it was this constant carrot being dangled of maybe you'll get your bonus. And obviously I'm in there, this girl trying to outrun my trauma, trying to get my house paid off or whatever it might be. I knew it was wrong and I knew what they were doing was wrong, but there's rank in that system. There's a disproportionate level of rank. So I had to, oh, sorry, I just hoped I could go home at 11 p.m. today. Oh, sorry, I just wondered if I could not attend that meeting. Oh, sorry, I just thought I could go to my friend's birthday instead of this thing today. And so that's where that can also imbalance. If you can see that happening, people questioning their own self-worth. Another sign, if you're worried about a friend, is potentially a lack of self-care. Say if you've noticed that someone's maybe not looking after themselves in the way they used to, not engaging in hobbies or things in the way they maybe used to as well.
That's fascinating. And just looking at you now, thriving, flourishing as an entrepreneur. So that sort of corporate job in your wake, if you like, less than 2% of VC funding goes to female founders. And that bothers me because I've got 2 daughters. So I was drawn to you, and I said that to you when we first met a few months ago, that's a real thing I want to champion and highlight, but also try and understand why. Is it a male chauvinistic, broken, archaic system, or is it a lack of self-belief and confidence, which goes back to role models in girls, particularly when the mum might be a housewife, but the dad was doing the work. So, that's not what I do. That almost brings it back to you actually as that role model. Do you find that a lot of sort of women you're speaking to do lack that self-belief, and you're having to bring that out of them? Because it feels like that's the one thing I've identified that's stopping girls coming through into business and entrepreneurship, because they don't believe in themselves.
So my daughter's 9. She has complete 100% self-belief right now. I don't know how old your girls are.
13 and 15,
Right.
but that's got to be because of her time spent with you, right?
But maybe yes, but what I mean is she hasn't quite gone through the bits where people start to bring her down. We've had a tiny bit of frenemy, but your girls are a bit older. We've had a tiny bit of, they didn't like I don't want to have my hair like that because they might not like it. Or I like this person, but they also like them, so I can't.
This is such an impressionable age I've got my girls in now,
So
actually.
mine isn't quite there, but I know we're going into it. So when we start questioning and assessing, and as women, we have this great fear of being too much. Because if I'm too much, then I'm taking from other people. I'm not being a good girl. I'm not, I was rewarded on being polite and colouring within the lines and keeping my room tidy and not being too loud and, just sit there, all these kind of things. I'm being stereotypical, but it's also true. And so I think there is a inherent almost feeling that you get to a point, and if I'm going to be, yes, queen, you go. But if I'm about to be too much, even though no one ever gave me the rule book for what too much is, there's almost this like inner pull to stop doing it. Why didn't you speak your mind? Why didn't you tell that friend where to go? Why haven't you put that boundary in yet? Why didn't you police the boundary you said you were going to do? It's this like, we don't want to take from others. And then the other thing I want to add to that, because I love that question. And again, with my daughter, I hope that she's there bossing the board. I always say to her, you could run Goldman Sachs, and she could. Like I said, she absolutely could. She could do a million things.
But that's putting it in her head as
Yeah,
well. That's awesome things to be told at that age.
There's a really dear friend of mine who's a mentor as well, who spent many years in the automotive industry at the absolute height of it, and he's now advising for another company. And he said, we had lunch, he was like, we just don't know how to get women to buy cars. Like, why aren't women buying cars? Like, I can tell you, because it's the process of, how do I buy my car? I actually got mine shipped over from Porsche Belfast. They're amazing. They're incredible. I didn't even drive it first. They were the loveliest team. The reason I bought it through them was because they were amazing end to end, and I couldn't recommend them highly enough. But the process of going in, feeling like isolated, having people just jump straight on you, being asked all these questions and feeling like you're going to be stupid or somehow get it wrong, or the amount of times I was asked where my husband was. You're like, oh, I'm not allowed to buy a car myself. I even had like, I'm not going to say who, someone else that I had previously driven their vehicles for years. I had emails from them being like, I was selling my car. Are you sure you really want to be doing this? I was like, I'm a 40-year-old woman, and you're telling me that I'm not able to do this because you want me to take out a finance package for something else. And, you're kind of given these experiences, and they may be few and far between, but we buy cars based on friends that say that there was a frictionless, easy process and it didn't give you difficulty. We're going to pitch boards when I'm shown role models that tell me that not only was that not difficult, it was amazing and seamless. And, that's as good as going there as it is going to, a brunch with your friends. And I think we're beginning to see those changes. And I really hope that other female founders can really support this sense of, if your friends are going, you cheer for them and you cheer for them hard. This whole like, oh, well, you don't want to do that. Or what happened to the kids when you're working every day? Or how are you going to fit that in alongside something else? Like, no, let's just stand there cheering and know that the next generation want to come through with that energy.
That's powerful. That's brilliant. And flowing on from that, to come back to you personally, someone that's giving so much to help others, and you putting the time and energy that goes into being a mother and a businesswoman. What do you do to look after yourself both physically and mentally? Because you're in great shape, and I feel like that's important to you, because I think
Yeah.
we both know how important that is for this. It's why I keep fit.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Do you have like a morning routine?
So I hate morning routines. So I turn 44 next month. So thank you for that. Yeah. So morning routines, I just think are a bit. I don't like the commercialization of them, because again, I think you're set up to fail before you've even kind of got out the door. And I think there's often on the women, I didn't journal, make ceremonial matcha, or home baked granola for my
There's so much
daughter.
pressure on that, right? If
Right.
you're going to be a millionaire, a billionaire, you've got to
Yeah.
get up at 4 in the
I
morning and
didn't.
run a
Yeah, I
marathon.
didn't do that, and I didn't make her organic granola, so I'm obviously a terrible mum as well, and didn't look after her nutrition needs. She's probably got like gut microbiome issues. Like, so yeah, I exercise daily. I move my body because that clears my mind. It's not. I enjoy the fact that it makes me feel stronger. I've got to lift suitcases. It's me and her, So like, you got to make sure that I'm able to always be able to look after her physically as well as me. So yeah, movement for me is hugely important. One of my really good friends, Justin, he's Justin Buckthorpe. He's got an amazing performance coaching business, works with Harry Kane and the golfers and everything. He says movement is medicine, but it's the dosage that's important.
Love
And
that.
I love that. So some days I can feel I'm a bit frayed. That's not the day to push myself. And so I
So
think
listening to your body.
completely. So when he says the dosage is important, and then some days when I'm like much more energetic, I need to work out first thing for me, and then I'm much more creative and task focused. If I'm writing, which I'll be writing again soon. If I'm writing, I do that in the morning, and then I tend to do face-to-face people work in the afternoon. I'm in a different space. So yeah, for me, that's kind of how my day looks. But I do try and incorporate some kind of strength training, do a lot of Pilates, and then sort of walking and other movements in my day-to-day life.
I love that. And mentally, and not just mentally, but like that sort of community. You mentioned, and I love the fact that you do, because I'm always like that, mentioning friends. You've got a community, you've got
Yeah,
a
yeah.
tribe around you. So at any one time, you must have felt very isolated, very lonely yourself, to have built this community that trust must be super important to you. But what do you do in terms of getting almost like that sort of therapy back for yourself? Because you're giving out to so many people, and you're taking a lot of negative energy on, if you like, in any given day. How do you disperse that? And is that through a lot of what you just said, but also interacting with other people? And how do you move that on?
That's a really good question, because there have been some times when I haven't maybe had enough of time in between a session. I don't necessarily know what's going to be in the session, obviously, until it's finished, and then having to say "mum" or something like that.
And sorry to interrupt you. You can't actually talk about what you've talked about. So you've got to somehow. I just wonder if there's someone you can talk to, not about
Yeah.
clients, but almost just like, this is my
Yeah,
turn
I
to
mean,
just do a bit of outpouring.
I do have my own therapist, and there have been, if I need to sort of go to her, she's amazing. She's in the book, actually. I waived my own right to anonymity, and my files are in there because I used to self-harm. And when I first went to see her, I used to scratch at my face until it bled. And I wanted to put her files of her first impression of me in there in case anybody was feeling ashamed about something they may be doing or feeling to show what a therapist really thinks. And so I have waived my own right to anonymity, and my files and my therapist is in there. So she's amazing. She's awesome. One of my best friends is in the room right now. So I'm quite unhinged in my personal life. I'm actually very unhinged.
You
I
seem
think
very comfortable with that. I mean,
I
I
am.
think it works for you.
It
I've
really
got
does.
that in mind as well. It's authenticity again, isn't it? We're not. I've had to remove all sorts of kind of train tracks and shackles of my own to then sort of be doing what I want to do. And
I see a lot of darkness. I hear a lot of wickedness, and I think that actually, it may be a weird. And I've had stuff happen to me, and maybe in a weird way, that makes me even more grateful for the opportunities that I do have. My friends and I, we travel a lot. We just went to like a music festival in Caparica, just south of Lisbon. We really focus on making time. We've all got big jobs. Everyone's insanely busy, but we really do carve out time to physically be together and just laugh and share. We're really open. We're really honest. Like, I don't have relationships in my life that are kind of surface. I have, everyone talks about it, but I've got a smaller group, but I'm completely myself. And that is quite unhinged when I'm with them.
yes, what I also like as well, and I think I know the answer to this, is it doesn't really feel like you've got a destination. It feels like all those experiences, all those people you interact with, all the things you're doing are all part of a journey that you embrace. Because at other times in your life, you've hit blockers, you've been stuck. Whereas now it feels like you've blown that all apart and you're just enjoying the journey. Have I got that right?
Totally. We were talking before we came on air, some things have been happening to you, that things that you could have spent years like forcing, trying. And then if you actually just release control, quite literally walks into you.
Yes.
And so that's what's been happening with me as well, is that I know I'm on the right path with things, because things that I would have, oh, I've got to try this and email that person or ask that friend or do this thing and why don't they come back to you, or this thing's gone wrong. And you're like, you're knocking on the wrong doors, babe. So as soon as I'm like very much in my flow, which is happening right now with the opportunities coming in, I've always got a couple of plans. There's always a few things that I'm thinking about doing and general direction. But as exactly as we were talking about off air, when they start arriving with ease, you go, okay.
But a lot of this comes down to manifesting and visualization, which is what we were talking about. I'm starting to really realize there's a power in the universe. Whatever force you put behind it, mine is a desire to make things happen, to connect people, or to be able to connect to someone or make something happen. And then it's amazing how much that's happening. I want to ask you, I would love to talk to you for so much longer. I want to ask you, on the basis of all that sort of trajectory and experience and perspective you've got looking back, anyone watching or listening, or a younger version of yourself, what is the one piece of advice that you would give them?
Don't take directions from anybody that has never left home.
That comes back to lived experience. I love that. So actually, you really embrace that. Can't learn it in a classroom.
Yeah, I just think there are a lot of people out there that will give you their advice. Some of it's really well-meaning. Some of it's in a kind of loving way because they want to keep you as you are now, because it would mean things changing for them if you were to evolve and grow. But if you want to become, let's let me say, the best version of yourself, your fullest self, if you've got a destination in mind, if you're feeling a pull, don't ask the people that have never gone anywhere else like that. That's totally fine. But if your experience is going to be different, find the people, as you say, facing forward and go and ask them.
And putting their own positive spin on things that could have actually been. I mean, this goes back to what you said about the fact that all these things that have actually happened to you that haven't been in any way nice at the time have molded you into the phenomenal, thriving woman that you are now. And I really thank you for making time to film me today.
Oh, I've loved it.
Yeah, I could go another hour, but we're going to have to stop there. But Annalie, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I loved it.